This is one of those heavy issues that is not solely about the issues of the day. This is one of those questions that is about, professors, to paraphrase the professor, how we choose to govern ourselves. And the discussions we're having here aren't materially different in nature than the ones they had in Independence Hall about how you balance out the decision-making and who does what. The difference is we have come to focus on looking at this through a lens of the issues of the day, not a lens of how we should structure our self-determination. And our history is one that when we have attempted to do that before, when we have erred in looking at these important structural questions through the issue of the day, we have so far rejected that notion. I'd like to, on that point, go back to what we've referenced many times but not talked a lot about today, which is the failed effort to pack the court by expanding its numbers in the Roosevelt administration in 1937, I believe it was. You know, remember the context of that time. It's been mentioned by Professor Ross and others about the court overturning a number of, modifying and reversing its view in some cases on the appropriate limitations on the constitutional powers of Congress to act in the economic space in particular. But remember what was happening politically. Less than a year before, there had been a presidential election in this country, and Franklin Roosevelt was reelected. And these issues were central in that election. I wasn't alive then, but it's a little personal to me. The Republican nominee for president that year was Alf Landon. He's from my little hometown of about 9,000 people. He was the only Republican governor reelected in the country in 1934, which is why he became our nominee in 36. And he lost in a landslide. In fact, he only carried Maine and Vermont, didn't even carry Kansas. Roosevelt had a mandate, we might say, and yet he overreached. And it took a bipartisan majority to say, notwithstanding that clear message from the people and notwithstanding the power of the presidency, we are going to defend the structure of this democracy and of this court. And has been mentioned, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee at the time, a Democrat, didn't favor packing the court. And ultimately, when it came to a vote in the Senate, the Democrat-led Senate Judiciary Committee said they don't favor the packing of the court. And the U.S. Senate, which was a majority Democrat at the time, voted overwhelmingly, I think it was 70 to something, not to adopt a court packing plan. So what's happening in this room today and in our politics today is different. It's different because for some reason we seem incapable of having what I would believe to be a more reasoned, bipartisan or apartisan, nonpartisan discussion about how we want our Supreme Court to function and what its appropriate role is. I won't read all the statements, they've been entered into the record, but right now at this moment in our history, it is my friends on the other side who seem intent, because they don't like the direction the court is headed, to pack it with new members. I suppose those of us on the more conservative side could have made the same argument for many years after the Roosevelt courts, because we didn't like a lot of those decisions. We, for the most part, didn't as vociferously argue about just fundamentally changing the structure. So I want to return to just a couple of questions here that have been touched on but before. Can any of you tell me, let me start, Professor Ross, you've addressed this, Mr. Capozzi, let me ask you, Mr. Scherer, and then Mr. Bowie. Let's assume that a court expansion plan is adopted in some form. What is the limiting principle that would limit its further expansion in the future if we succumb again to the political passions of the moment? Mr. Capozzi?
I don't think there is any limit. That's one of the fatal flaws of the proposal, that if one president packed the court, then the next president could pack the court, and it would just be a never-ending cyclical process, and you end up with potentially hundreds of Supreme Court justices.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Mr. Capozzi?
The only limit will be what each side can get away with.
Mr. Scherer? Professor, what's the limiting principle?
So the role of the court is an important question, as you've laid out. And the role is not to be this undemocratic superweapon in the middle of our democracy. The role is not to try to put as many of our people—
Is there a limiting principle on if we expand it today because one side's mad, do we expand it tomorrow because somebody else is? What's the limiting principle?
Putting justices on the court for their own sake is not a good idea, nor is changing the size of the court simply because 9 is a better number than 8 or 10 is a better number than 9.
Thank you, Professor. I yield back. I'm out of time.